I feel like when it comes to the power rankings for plays I like in this game, this has to be the top one, right? The Browns team total under 16.5?
It has to be. The Browns just don't score points. They just don't. And they're going to score points tonight in this weather. I can't believe this is not sitting around like 13.5. To me, that would be a number where I think, okay, I don't know about this. But 16.5? They've scored 16 or less in 7 of their last 8 games, and now they have to face arguably the best defense in the NFL. When it comes to points allowed this season, Steelers are number 2, only to the Chargers. So how are they going to score in the conditions against this Steelers defense? How are they going to get to 17? I just absolutely do not see it at all. I like the full game under. I like the Browns team total under. So when you look at this, I just can't believe this number is where it is. So props to you for finding that. You're having a really good day, Chelsea. You found this number. Your Chris Sale bet came through. You're going to buy Blake a big jug of barbecue sauce. Something like everything's going your way.
Well, this bet hasn't cashed just yet. Jenks, I think we need to maybe entertain the other side for just a second.
Yeah.
Because, the purpose of the show is to talk everything out. So people who will be on the Browns tonight, this is probably some of their ammo, saying, we're seeing this in the chat right now. Every AFC North game this season has been a one-possession game. But let me lay out the contenders in the AFC North and the teams that reside in that division. The Ravens, the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Browns. One of these things is not like the other. So I feel like when you look at some of these other games, I get it. I get why the Steelers and the Ravens play close games. I get, why the Bengals and the Steelers, or the Bengals and the Ravens, whatever team you want to lay out there, why those games have been close. All 3 of those teams are very good. But then you look at the Browns. Do they really fit into the mix? I feel like that stat could be misleading.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, the Browns are a bad football team. They have nothing to play for. And they're sitting there with that albatross of a contract just on the books with Deshaun Watson. I know he's not playing. I'm just saying everything they have planned after bringing him in has fallen apart. And as much as I love Jameis, this is still a bad offense. Clearly the worst team in the division. Are Browns fans going to care? And we're watching the Cavaliers now. Thank God Cleveland has the Cavaliers with as well as they're playing. But yes, you make a good point, which is this division is super, super top heavy. It's like Steelers, Ravens, Bengals, Browns at the bottom. The Browns, they're just so bad. Even the Bengals, even though they've disappointed, like they play close games, they're at least explosive. Like, what is it about the Browns that scares you in this game? If you're trying to make a case for Cleveland, and look, my favorite expression, or the expression I always try to rely on in betting, is the number, which is it's set there for a reason. Vegas knows a lot more than I do. So you should be able to make a case for the Browns. Is it the weather here? Because when it comes to the quality of these two teams, it is Steelers far and away, and it's not close. Is it the Steelers' offense? What is the case for the Browns besides the weather tonight? I don't know.
I guess they beat the Ravens. That is their signature win, I suppose you would say, over the last few weeks. And they did actually score in that game, scored 29. But here's the thing. I feel like this is the makeup of a defense that Cleveland can actually perform against. If you have a bad secondary, we know Jameis can sling it. So I feel like maybe that was a matter of the matchup. It's not going to be the same deal against the Steelers, in my opinion. Because if you look at Cleveland, they had 321 yards of passing offense in that game against the Ravens, who also are the number 1 worst secondary, statistically speaking, in the NFL. Not the same deal for the Steelers. I feel like if you can get some pressure on Jameis Winston, which the Steelers have been pretty good at doing to opposing quarterbacks, that's going to spell disaster for Jameis and company. So I think I'm going to remain firm on the Steelers, but I do think that team total is a better play here. From a prop standpoint, when you have a total of 36.5, usually not going to be like the bet on, but I do think there are some angles here. The BetQL 5-star best bet of the day is taking Najee Harris over his rushing prop. Makes sense. Bad weather, you rely on the running game, especially if it's a positive game script late in this game. And Najee Harris has had a nice little season. So, Jenks, yay or nay to Najee Harris?
I'm going to say cast my vote for yay. Yes. Now, I do like your guy, George Pickens. I know you generally like betting on him, and that's a good bet tonight. I like that as well. Low number. I think it's set at 57 and a hook. He's eclipsed that in his last 4 games. But when you think about the weather, then you think, okay, well, aren't the Steelers going to just feed Najee Harris, especially if they get a lead? Like, when you think about the Steelers and how they play games, if the Steelers get a lead in this game, they're not going to start tossing the ball around. They're going to say, you know what? Try to come back against our defense. So what we're going to do is take time off the clock. We're not going to put the ball in the air. We're going to feed Najee Harris, and we'll see if you can come back against our D. So if you believe in that sort of game script, which I don't think is too far-fetched, then I think Najee Harris late in this game could eclipse that number.
Yeah, so you could play it 2 ways. Rushing yards is set at 67.5, or you could go rushing attempts for 17.5, which sometimes can be trickier than it appears. So I think I'd just go with the rushing yards at 67.5. The reason that I'm not huge on George Pickens tonight is simply because of the weather. And also, George Pickens gets the bulk of his receiving yards off of those deep passes. He's the moon ball guy. He is the deep threat for the Steelers. And if the weather is terrible, I'm not sure how many of those passes we're going to see, because you look at his longest reception in these games, 37, 34, 43, 44, and 31 over his last 5 games. So I'm not sure if you can count on one of those big chunk plays, but he has had the targets. Like, Russell Wilson loves throwing to George Pickens. I saw where he's averaging 91 receiving yards since Russell Wilson has taken over. So clearly he's the guy. He had 12 targets last game against the Ravens. So I think it's still a safe play. I'm just trying to debate and see if it's actually going to make the card for me. How many bets are you playing in this game, Jenks?
I don't know. I think it's one.
That's what I
You're like, I can tell by your reaction. 1. I don't know. I love that team total. Although I kind of want to play. Maybe I'll play 2. Maybe I'll just go nuts and play 2. There's a hockey bet I like. I don't know. Probably just the 1. Probably the team total under 16 and a hook for the Browns. But I have to say that I really like the full game under as well. And when you look at props, the props you mentioned, particularly for the Steelers, I think are pretty solid plays. It's kind of an interesting game, but I also think there's a lot of bets that make sense if you think you know how this game is going to go. And I think we have a pretty good idea, at least how we think it's going to go.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm going to put any money on the Steelers, though, because I still think it's a divisional matchup, and I'm not sure what to expect. Like, how big is the sample size for Russell Wilson to where we know we can trust him? Like, what has it been, 4 or 5 games? Not even that. And I'll leave you with this stat. Pittsburgh is 1-7 in Thursday night football games on the road since Mike Tomlin came to the Steel City. I'm not sure what's baked into that stat, if it even matters tonight, but just something I think the masses should know.